Good evening, gentlemen. I am excited to interview Dan Francis. I do believe, Dan, this is the first time that I'm actually interviewing you in our Facebook group. And I want to thank you for joining us and sharing your personal journey over here.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's nice to have you here. And what we're going to be doing today is really going through something which you cannot get from the other trainings. You cannot get an actual personal experience of a real guy, real family, real struggle, real transformation, real wins, just from a video that I teach, which is interesting and philosophical. And I really appreciate you taking the time and really the heart to share, because this is personal. It's not been easy, and I really appreciate that. So before we get started about the marriage itself, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself so we know who you are, where you're from, what you do, just a little bit, to whatever degree you feel comfortable.
Name's Dan. I live in Texas. 51 years old. I found AMFT after my second marriage was failing. Actually got 4 daughters. 2 of them still live with me. One's a stepdaughter and then one's an older one. She's got kids of her own.
Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on? You said your second marriage. Just quickly, how long was your first marriage? A little bit of context.
About 3-4 years.
Okay, your second marriage was about 17 or something like that?
About a little over 15.
A little over 15.
We were together for 17.
Okay, because I remember the number 17 somewhere.
Yeah.
And just to put this in context, Dan and I started working together in August of 2021. And we finished working together probably somewhere mid or early 2022. Okay, so we're talking about something which started about 2 years ago. And although Dan has been on the support team helping other men, he's been part of Amazing Marriage Fast Track in just a capacity of just helping other men by sharing your experience. So I appreciate that as well. And just a little bit of context. So what was going on in the marriage before you actually reached out to Amazing Marriage Fast Track? What was going on or what was not going on in the relationship between you and Dawn at the time?
Oh, well, by the time I reached out, we were separated. That's probably actually about the 3rd time we'd separated in the marriage. She was having a full-blown affair, not hiding it, anything. So, yeah, we were probably beyond stage 4.
Stage 4. Okay, so for the guys who are not familiar with what Dan just said, he's referring to stage 4 of marriage cancer, which is an entire separate thing, which we're not going to get into. But essentially, when your wife is in an affair and she's not even trying to hide it and she's just flaunting it, like, you're essentially stage 4 or may even be past it, if there are other factors going on in your life. And I want to bring guys' attention to the fact that this is your 3rd time separated in the same marriage. It's important to note because...
Yeah, about the 3rd time, I think. There's a few times that, she took off for one night. But it was the 2nd time, because she had moved out like a year prior that only lasted a couple weeks. But so, yeah, it was the 2nd or 3rd time.
Got it. And why did you decide to join Amazing Marriage Fast Track?
Pretty much, I've tried just about everything I could on my own. I knew there was obviously something going on because, the first marriage failed for a lot of the same reasons, she gave me. Of course, tried a bunch of things on my own, and of course that didn't get me anywhere. Like the dreaded list, for instance.
The list that we talk about, guys, like, just doing, I sometimes call it the honey-do list. Like,
Yeah,
honey, if you do this whole list, our relationship is gonna be fine, and it doesn't work. And it's a good indication that you have a good heart and you have good intention and you love her, but actually on a tactical, strategic level, it doesn't
Yeah.
really work. And so, what was it specifically? I mean, there are lots of programs out there. Not every program is for every situation or for every marriage. Same thing with Amazing Marriage Fast Track. We both know there's a pretty strict intake process. It's not for everybody. But what was it about the things that you saw, whether it was the Facebook group or other videos, YouTube? I don't know. I think it was at that time we did like a big, an online webinar. But I'm curious, what was it that you saw that made you decide, okay, I would like to join AMFT?
Um, well, I guess I've been, looking around on the internet at a few different things. And, I got some newsletters. There was another program out there. I got some emails, saw a few videos of that. But then, I came across yours on Facebook. I don't think I may have read the Facebook group at the time, a few different things in it. But it was coming up on one of the nights when you had the live. And basically, I got on that and listened to what you had to say, and it just kind of resonated.
Do you remember what resonated?
I want to say you told the story about the cat being a waiter.
So that was like, I remember that. I think that was one of the longest, like a 3 hour live. Because I remember by the time I was done, I was exhausted. It was like over 3 hours because we went deep over
Uh,
there. And
I think it was a long one.
yeah, yes. And that was so the cat and the waiter. So, and for guys who are new, the cat and the waiter is an analogy I have to help you understand that there are certain parts of your personality, of a husband's personality, which they're so critically important to a relationship. But if you don't see it, it sort of governs. Like one of the things that you've told me is that your communication skills have improved as a result of
Yeah.
AMFT. Um, what type of experience was it being in AMFT?
It was definitely a eye-opening experience, and definitely led to several changes in the way I interact with people, my children, customers, employers, just pretty much how I interact with everybody changed changed my I guess it would change my patience level. I know I kind of used to have a kind of a undue expectation of how people should know something when they may not know anything. So,
I love the way you said it. So let's talk about that patience, right?
yep.
You're not 32 years old, right? I'm sure you've tried to have patience before you joined AMFT, and that's a random guess. But am I right or wrong?
Yep.
You've tried to have patience, okay? And there are so how would you describe like you joined AMFT to get patience? It sort of doesn't make sense. I know I'm putting you on the spot, and this just question just came into my head. But how would you help people understand who are watching this, who all understand, yes, it's important to have patience in order to be a good husband, but they're trying to have patience, but somehow it's not working. They are finding themselves very much impatient, or their wife feels that they're being impatient. So how would you explain that to them in briefly? I'm putting you on the spot for the fun of it. How would you explain that to them, given whatever you've learned with inner cat or subconscious communication and whatnot?
uh well, I would say, up until AMFT, things I tried, sometimes it may last, a few weeks, month, but it's like always kind of reverted back to your old self. Um, After joining AMFT, the principles and things that you taught, they kind of open your mind to look at things and think of things in a different way. Um,
So
that's,
another way of, is it okay with you if I sort of sum it up in
yeah,
a different way? Because you're going very, I'm gonna make it very simple. If in order to really have patience, and in order to communicate better, you actually have to see reality correctly.
that would
right? Is that another
That's
way of
right.
saying it? I'm trying to simplify it
Yeah.
because you've been through the program, so we can talk fancy language. But like other guys, they're just fresh into the group and like they have no idea what we're talking about. So like you have to see things and correctly. And what would you say was your first epiphany, being within going through the training and going through the program? What was the first like thing that hit you? I'm not talking about before you joined. I'm talking about after you joined. When you were a client, what was the first thing that you were like, "Oh my gosh!" Like when an awareness that you got?
Um,
To whatever
it's
degree,
pro-
you feel comfortable.
I'd say it was probably learning about, all the things that I thought I'd been trying over the several months or years, or yeah, it was probably a couple of, but yeah, things I've been trying forever, how those could actually make it worse and backfire on me.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. It's interesting, and it's interesting because it's not the first or second time where someone tells me that one of the most powerful moments in the program was when they come in and they realize, oh my God, all these things that I've been doing
Yep.
not only wasn't working but making things worse, and why it was making worse. And for context for guys watching this, your inner cat, which Dan touched on, it's a part of your personality that gets affected by about 3% of what you say or do. The other 97% that you say or do actually doesn't help the situation. So that's why you can do the whole to-do list. You can do everything your wife wants, and she could still be stuck with a certain picture of you because that 3% governs the picture your wife has of you in her head. So it's important to get clear on that picture because otherwise you won't be able to overcome it. And then it feeds a cycle of impatience and difficulties communicating. One of the things you've mentioned to me once is that being an AMFT and helped you communicate with others really, a lot more effectively. Can you talk about which relationships specifically have improved, whether they're personal
Um,
or professional?
Personal and professional,
Mm-hmm.
um, relationships with, dealing with my kids have improved. Um, but when it comes to professional, like, so I do contract work I was an employee for a company for several years, and I've been doing contract work for about, 2 years now. And, I kind of told you before about the one time that we kind of disagreed on a certain job, and kind of the skills that I learned in AMFT, I wound up getting more money out of that job. It wasn't as much as I thought I should get at first, but I did wind up getting more money than what he was wanting to pay me at first, as well as, it gave me the training or I was able to look at the situation in a different way and kind of see it through his eyes as well. And I could tell you, add on to that, something that's happened since I talked to you the last time. We ran into another issue came up where it was regarding my business cards that some of the clients for that company had gotten my business cards, and we got into it over that. And I can tell you, if it hadn't been for the AMFT training, I'd probably no longer be doing contract work for that company. Uh,
Why? What happened?
well, because of the skills and communication skills I learned in the program, I kind of use them to navigate through that, and I'm still doing their contract work. So
That's great. That's awesome. That's so beautiful. I didn't even know that. And what's amazing about it is like when guys are working, here's the thing. It's very important. Why do we talk about like the impact it has on other relationships? Because let's be honest, Dan, the changes you got to make in your marriage, or if you want to know if they're real, the only there's a couple of ways to know if they're real, but one of the few ways to know if they're real is if you see it in other parts of your life. If you see it in
right,
your professional work, if you can negotiate better, not because you're a better negotiator, but because you could actually see things from their perspective, which will usually make you more money also, by the way, right?
right,
Which is pretty cool. And it comes down to seeing when you know your inner cat, you sort of watch out for it. You sort of see it. You're like, 1 second, where's it going to show up? And it's very subtle, And it's like I
Yeah.
said, it's in 3% of your personality. Like you could do 97% of things right, and they'll screw up in that 3%. Um, that's cool. And do you mind to share a little bit about the difference in as a parent? You have some younger kids,
9 and 11.
right? And some of them are a handful. So could you say a little bit about the benefits that you have gotten or they have gotten, or it sort of goes together, from applying the principles that you've
Well,
learned?
they're still a handful,
That I can't change that. They're supposed to be.
but you know, prior to AMFT, I used to probably get frustrated. At times I get angry and start yelling, and I yell at the kids. And now I'm way more patient and try. Yeah, every now and then might raise my voice or something, but it's not near like anything it used to be. I try to talk to them and understand their side of the story.
But you're still a parent. You're still not letting them run the show.
Right.
So the lack of the reduction in yelling. I mean, again, this is something I'm sure you've tried before, not to yell. Again, this is like the patience thing. It's not like
Yep.
rocket science. Everybody knows you shouldn't yell. The problem is if you're not influencing your kids and they're misbehaving and they're not,
Yep.
you're not really being effective with them. You have to put in so much effort, more than you feel you should. At a certain point, you'll get angry. A normal person will get angry. So you can try to not be angry, but it's gonna bubble up and just burst out of you. So,
Yep.
right, and the work you've done is essentially taken, like, again, when you see that subconscious part of the communication and you apply it, your kids see it too. In a certain way, they see it quicker than other people. You said, like, you were like beyond stage 4, and that marriage was not saved. Like the marriage you came in to save was not saved because it was really late and advanced. If you could look back in time, and I don't think I've ever asked you this, but again, this just popped into my head as we're talking. If you joined AMFT, let's say a year or two earlier, based on what you know now,
Uh-huh.
do you think that would have saved that marriage, or at which point do you think it would have made that difference?
Yes, I do. Yeah, if it had been a year, I'd say if it had been at least a year earlier, it would have.
Why do you say it? Like, what has your ex told you or hinted about the changes you've made that says that?
Well, I know, of course, she did mention that did see the changes in me. Um, but I know going back, yeah, about a year earlier, after the first time she moved out for an extended amount of time, um, if it was right back around that time and I come across this and put this into effect, uh, I believe it would have saved it, because that was kind of back basically before the affair started. I think it would have.
And I think at one time she even after you joined, she told you this has been the first meaningful conversation we've had in 17 years. She said something along those
Yes.
lines.
Yeah, she did say something just pretty much like that.
What went through your mind when she said that?
Huh?
What went through your mind when she said that?
Uh, I well, first meaningful conversation in 17 years is like, okay, so none of the other ones are meaningful, but of course, that did kind of give me indication that she saw a difference in the way I was communicating.
Yeah.
Um,
And there was, I just briefly glanced at the comments over here, and I just want to make a comment because I appreciate what you just shared there, because, and I'm going to get to the comment as well, because a lot of the guys, like when you're separated once and twice, each one of those are major warning signs. And
yep,
when, and, but if you don't fix it, even if you come back together, in a guy's mind, hey, we're back together. In a woman's mind, it's not like that. In a woman's mind, it's like, okay, I'm giving it one little small chance. And every time the separation happens again, it sort of really starts building a rather thick ice wall.
Right.
And I think it's important. I appreciate you sharing that because it's very helpful for guys to know that. And if it's okay with you, Dan, I wanted to make one comment over here because I see someone commented, yeah, see things from their perspective, absolute gold. The key over here in seeing things from their perspective is not necessarily by asking them, but there's a process of subconscious communication that we teach that you can actually see things from their perspective without talking to them. Like, Dan, could you talk to that a little bit and share a little bit about like what happened for you as you were going through the process of seeing things from Dawn's perspective, but without talking to her? Like, what happened to you as you saw that?
Well, like I said, it's kind of eye opening, but I'd say, it wasn't like, I started to see things, I guess, the way that she may have been seeing them for several months or years, or, but, without actually asking her, hey, I didn't ask her. Um, just like, with the boss, I didn't have, I was able to see things from his perspective, but I wasn't asking him, hey, what's your opinion or perspective on
Right,
this?
exactly. And that's very important. That's very important. Like,
I guess it
that's,
just kind
go
of
ahead.
gives you an instinct or intuition on how to read people a little bit better.
That's very, very, and that's critical. Dan, the question on people's mind would be, are you dating women? Is this helping you attract women or understand women better, interact with women? Please share a little bit about that.
Yes.
No, no, that's not going to be enough. That's yes is not enough of an answer.
Yeah, yes, I have been dating, but yes, it has definitely helped in uh, communicating and talking to women better. I kind of tell you the let's I'll just say the one I've been dating. She just had her mom passed away a couple months back, so I had to kind of navigate through that. So, um, I was able to. That's another thing I guess AMFTs helped me with too is probably having more empathy towards other people as well that I may not have been as good before.
And I want to say this: it's not because you were selfish. It's not because you didn't care. It's because you couldn't see things through their lenses. It's a very
Right,
important distinction. Like the empathy that you're saying, it all comes and the empathy, the patience, the communication, the intuition. What that comes from is your ability to see the picture that people have of you. And once you
right,
see that, you can see what they're going through. So it's not like, oh, Don was just some cold, son of a gun, and well, he was, and I helped him become sensitive. That's not the case at all. It's not true. In fact, if that's true, I wouldn't be able to help him. Right? It was more like you really cared about your wife. You loved her. And I'm doing more of the talking because I know you've been a man of few words since I've known you, really. You know, even on our Q&As, it was like, so I'm just, if it's okay with you, I'm just explaining a little more about you. It's like, I could tell he loved his wife. I could tell he was doing his best to try to please her, do her to-do list, and make her happy. What was missing was the tactical, the strategic part of actually seeing what was the 3% that he was saying or doing, which was messing things around. And
right.
and I appreciate you, like, you taking the time and agreeing to do this interview. Knowing that you're a man of a few words, I knew that this was going to be one where you like you talk a little bit. I want to again, for guys who want to have that conversation with us to see if you and your marriage, if your situation is a good fit for AMFT, just write I'm next, and then we'll take a look at you and see if you're a good fit. What would be your final words to someone who's on the fence? They sort of know they need help, but they're like, no, I just want to do it by myself and figure this out. like, what would you say to that guy? You know, if it was you, like 2 years ago, you're talking to yourself, or you're talking to someone else over here, but in your situation 2 years ago, what would you say to him? What would you wish somebody said to you? You know, back then.
Well,
You know, a few years before. I'm sorry, not 2 years ago. For to you, in your case, we're talking about 3 years ago. You know, 3.5 years ago. What do you wish somebody said to you, and what would you say to somebody else?
I'd say if you're on the fence, to go for it because I tried for heck since my first marriage failed. I had tried improving myself and never got the clarity that I have now. Um, and yeah, I can tell you, you know what, even when it comes to money, I'm kind of tight, but it was well spent as an investment in myself and my future.
And the key over here, guys, is pay attention to what he's saying. You could be in one relationship after another, and it still won't fix itself,
Yep.
right? It's like, I'm sure when you got married a second time, you were like, this time I'm gonna figure this out, right? This time I'm gonna figure this out. And I've had guys who were married 3, 4 times, like, but you already, you know, when you joined AMFT, you were 49, right? Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's like, how much time do you have to figure? I mean, you could spend a lifetime figuring it out and then write a book when you're 85. But like, or you can get the help earlier on in the process. And I respect what you've done for yourself. It has not been a pain-free journey for yourself. We both know that. I look forward to once you do choose that, you know, Miss Lucky, the lucky one who gets to have you. And you know, once you're, because I know you're still, you know, still dating, and this, like you said, her dad passed away, and this stuff going on. I definitely look forward to interviewing you again and see, you know, how your marriage takes off with what you know, like from the beginning, starting to apply this. And what are your final thoughts? Like, what comes to mind? What are you looking forward to in terms of which area in your life are you looking to see what your new personality brings for you?
Um, not real sure. um, you know, I can already see where it's changed a lot of things. You know, if I do end up getting married again, hopefully it lasts this time. Um,
Well, not just hopefully. Hope is not a good strategy.
well, yeah, hope's not a good strategy, but I believe I definitely have better skills to navigate it now. Um, because man, let's face it, any marriage, there's problems are gonna arise.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and the key of it, I mean, even in my marriage as well, we sometimes, me and Maki will sometimes disagree. We're both strong personalities. She's strong personality. She's like, right. So there are disagreements. We're not the same person. But those disagreements, same thing like, you know, you're dating that lady.
Uh-huh.
If in a healthy relationship, what you're going to see, Dan, is the disagreements actually make you stronger because you learn about each other more. Okay, you learn. I'm gonna make up a name. Okay, Sarah. Okay, let's say you're dating Sarah, right? You're gonna learn more about Sarah. You're gonna learn how to communicate better. She's gonna learn more about you. So you're more careful. You're both more careful next time because you understand each other. So the love actually extends to an understanding. It's not just a passionate love of attraction or of alignment. It's a love of understanding. And yes, and every time you have disagreement and a misunderstanding, you get closer and closer and closer, as opposed to those disagreements making you further and further and further. So that doesn't change in that sense, but the disagreements are less tense. They don't last as long. You don't say things that you regret. You know what I mean? You don't have to clean up all that damage. And man, I'm excited to see your journey as you move along. You know, you have a whole life ahead of you, you know, God willing. And again, for guys who do want to explore if AMFT is a good fit for you, just comment I'm next and we will take it from there. And with that, we'll wish you all a great evening. I hope you gained a lot from Dan. Dan, thank you so much for your time. I would love to hear. Yes, and I'd love to hear you guys comments, feedback. What are your biggest takeaways? What are your biggest distinctions? What is the biggest thing you gained from Dan? All right, guys, have a great evening.